There are many ways of building something, including using containers. The Stadium 974 was built for the Doha World Cup 2022. It was built with thousands of these containers like this, and the reason of doing so is that after this is no longer needed, it could be demolished and being rebuilt in another location as easy as it was initially built. Another good example of this style is the Huashanshan Emergency Hospital. This was built in 2020 during the first phase of the COVID outbreak in Wuhan, China. And thanks to these highly standardized containers, the Chinese government is able to provide more than 10,000 beds in less than 10 days. This is actually not a really new idea in architecture. The Nakagin Capsule Tower would be a very early example of this, and I define this tower as an uncompleted utopia, and it will never be completed. The Nakagin Capsule Tower was a building existed from the 1970 to 2022 in Ginza, Tokyo. It was designed by Kurokawa Kisho, and it was a 30-floor tower. It was initially designed as a short-stay hotel or studio, but ended up with being a mixture of the residential apartment, office building, and even storage area. Kurokawa Kisho, born in 1934, is probably one of the most important architects in modern Japan history. In the second half of his career, he was also an urban planner and is highly related to his philosophy. He defined himself as the fourth generation of Japanese architects, which means that he was born and educated. He was growing up and educated mainly after the Second World War, and that is the era when Kurokawa and probably outside generation of Japanese is witnessing the decay of the traditional imperial Japanese norm. His most representative philosophy is metabolism. Also, he later turns to the symbiosis. From the 1960s to the 1970s, that is a period when the post-war Japan's economy is recovering and ready for boost in the 80s. During that period, and together with the Olympics, the World Expo, the new ideas, new concepts in architecture is always appreciated, and the metabolism group was formed during that period. In 1960, when the World Design Conference was held in Tokyo, about 10 young architects formed this group, and these group members were the so-called metabolists, including Kurokawa, of course, and Kikutake Kiyonori and others later become the important figures in the design and architecture of Japan. This little brochure here was distributed by these group members during the conference, and was their statement. The only project completed by this group was part of the design of the 1970 Osaka Export, because although they are all calling for metabolism, but a lot of disagreements is also generating among these young architects. But the impact brought by the metabolism movement is much longer than the group itself. So what is metabolism as a philosophy? It was highly impacted by modernism and brutalism building. The somehow official explanation of this is to design a city so flexible and its connections that its part could grow, transform themselves, and die while the whole animal went on living. So it is really an idea that is not only architecture but also an urban planning perspective, and that is probably the reason why Kurokawa was turned into an urban planner at the second half of his career. So to put it simpler, it is calling for architecture and city as an extension of nature. It is considering this as a growing thing. And in terms of architecture, it is calling for this modular architecture made by these replaceable units as this city in the air concept designed by Isozaki Arata. Kurokawa further explains the metabolism under the context of Japanese society. He emphasized that this is something that is highly Japanese. There are 5 characteristics of the Japanese society according to Kurokawa is contributing to metabolism. First, the population explosion in the 70s. Given the land in Japan is super limited, the high multi-level buildings and high-density planning is the only choice. Second, higher mobility. Third, the changing technology. It is reshaping the relationship between the human and technology every day. And the fourth one is a little bit tricky. The reliance on the wood rather than stone of concrete in traditional Japanese architecture. A lot of those ancient Japanese architecture are built with wood or even paper instead, and in the contrast, in the West, stone and concrete seems to be the preferred materials. The major difference between these materials is that the wood is organic and will decay, which means that the Japanese architecture, they could actually be rebuilt regularly. It is something growing, it's something will die and come back to life. It's something growing, it's changing. While the stone or concrete building after they are built, they are just there. Kurokawa is also citing some concepts from Buddhism. For example, the samsara. This one believes in that the lives can transform to each other, everything is a cycle turning around. And an architect reviewer, when he was reviewing Kurokawa's design, he said that Kurokawa was rejecting the Catholic hell to heaven dualism. You can find the feeling of the incompleteness in Kurokawa's design because Kurokawa believes in the possibility of growing, possibility of changing, even in the building. So back to the tower. What makes it special? This tower is made of two concrete towers. This concrete towers like this here. So one here is for stairs, this one here is for the elevators, and these little boxes or these little containers, as we can see in here, they are attached to this concrete. They are attached to the concrete structure. It's just like a trunk and the leaves. And here is a side view of it, top view of it. The fancy thing of this architecture is that, according to Kurokawa's original design, when we no longer need or want to upgrade or want to exchange or whatever, we can just pull the target unit out. We can just pull it out and we insert back a new one. So through this way, this building can always be updated. It can be something grow. It's just like metabolism. And that is where this name of metabolism philosophy comes from. And here is some pictures of these capsules. These are not the exact same capsules used in this tower, but similarly. So these things are actually being made in factories that is hundreds of kilometers away from Tokyo. They are being shipped here by truck and use cranes to attach to the concrete structure. A similar design would be the Habitat 67 in Canada, but so this one was using the precast concrete. The major difference is that this one is not designed to be exchangeable. So it is not really meeting the philosophy of Kurokawa. The aesthetics of the Nakagin Tower we'll describe that as the retro futurism, the futurism from the past. Or in the 70s, it's actually a mixture of the space age and a little bit cyborg. You can see these little round windows on the Nakagin Capsule Tower and connect that to the round windows in the space station. This is actually a very symbolic Kurokawa design. You can see it in a lot of different architectures made by him. And this style was also cited by Cyberpunk. For example, Cyberpunk 2077, the video game in the Cyberpunk aesthetic style, it has this metabolism buildings inside it. So this style is something that people are really imagining it to appear in the future, in the 70s of the 21st century, rather than the 70s of the 20th century. Inside these units, it's just a living room that you got everything you need to survive. A bathroom, a kitchen, a bed, and wardrobe, everything you need here. It's a 2.5 meter plus multiplied by 4 meter multiplied by 2.5 meter. Extreme efficiency of land use. So inside of this, you can observe that everything, including the microwave or the TVs or everything, they are very well integrated with each other, and that is creating a feeling of, I would call it, high technology, and probably a similar aesthetics of this Soviet Union missile control room. It is not necessary to do so, but that is creating a feeling of the futuristic. But when we're reviewing the social aspect of the Nakagin Capsule Tower, it's a little bit ironic because the poles are actually never get changed. It is never worked as the Kurokawa was designed. It is never worked as it should be. Kurokawa was because if you want to change a part, you need to get 100% of agreement because if you just pull out the part and insert a new one, the public space would be changed. So you need to gather agreements from 114 residents, and nobody is going to do that. Plus, it's very expensive to do so. And in order to exchange one, due to the design failure, you will need to remove other parts above it, and then you can put into a new one. That's a lot of work. So the metabolism is actually never working in this building. The end of Nakagin came to the 2022. So this building was in Ginza, the most expensive place in Tokyo, and its lack of maintenance because it's a very special structure, and the earthquake resistance was in the 70 standards, and large use of asbestos, the toxic materials, all become the reason why it would be demolished. Actually, in 2006, there has been more than 80% of the residents agree to demolish it, but due to this and the economic crisis, COVID, this finally happened in 2022. Actually, in 2006, after voting, Kurokawa, as a designer of it, was saying that no, there's some way we can save it. There's some way we can probably just change the part. We can do this or that. But he passed away in 2007, and nobody is mentioning that anymore. But luckily, there are some legacy. During the last year of the Nakagin Capsule Tower, some planners and architects are organizing tourism, even in multiple language regions, to this building. And they are even offering this short rent project that people actually living in it for a short period and filling it. A few parts is being, after this will be demolished, a few parts is being kept and being went into the collection of different museums. And that is the only legacy of this most representative metabolism building left to us now. It's a failure, but I love the design.